and my special guest is here. So we'll float, and I hope you have your life jackets on so that we can all stay afloat while talking about these deep things. Today we are rubbing minds and shaking the waters on African culture, the eroding African culture, and how much of African identity and norms and traditions and values, is lost. And so far, I've been taking calls from y'all. Y'all say we blame the parents. Parents are not teaching the kids. The parents are not doing this. The parents are not doing that. And I hear you loud and clear. The parents definitely have a part to play in all of this. But what part do you have to play? What part does the westernization have to play? What part does civilization have to play? What part? Where are the other parts of this story? Because we cannot all blame, put everything on the shoulders of the parents. Of course, we're talking about this and more. If you have questions and thoughts and opinions, please do feel free to join the conversation and call in on 0705 993 6937 or 0705 993 7937. How much of the African culture has been forgotten, or destroyed, or have disappeared? Who would you blame for this? Colonialism, or your parents, the society, and more? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. As always, I have a special guest with me in the studio as a media innovator, a digital content strategist, a seasoned TV host, because I met him actually as a seasoned TV host, a convener of Creators Conference, a politician, a man definitely of many parts, the managing director of Tara Olive. At the heart of this, my special guest, goal, or his driving goal, is to elevate the image and the brand equity of blackness and Africanness. In fact, this man resonates blackness and Africanness in his ways, in his content, in his dressing, and starting every time with himself, and his perception of things. He's deeply invested in the pre-colonial African history and believing that, understanding this era is key to redefining Africa and the African identity and the potential that Africa definitely has. Like I said, he's the convener of Creators Conference, which is a platform he champions, for sustainable content creation ecosystems and more. He's also a multifaceted professional and, of course, deeply rooted in media, content creation, politics, like I said, and more. Ladies and gentlemen, here with me in the studio is Tosin Odofa. Hi.
Debrah, how you doing now?
I do. I hope as a TV host now, you will not be judging my presentation. Now you will not be saying, this girl. You will not be saying, this how she said this thing. I will not be feeling somehow beside you now.
I know that feeling. I remember there were those times when I've been on the red carpet and I'm talking to radio hosts. First things first, radio hosts will always want to first completely monopolize the conversation.
Wow.
Radio hosts, they talk for Africa. But you also have a scenario where like, this is another professional I'm talking to.
Yeah, and then you start overthinking.
It's good stuff.
Good to have you in the studio.
It's good to see you. You're looking good.
You too. You're speaking. You're repping Africa. This is Nigeria. This is Africa. This is, I don't even know what else to say at this point.
It's a fusion. At the end of the day, once you see it, you feel like it's Africa, and that's kind of the interesting thing about identity and this whole thing that we're talking about, African identity. And I have to be real with you that I am actually really quite excited about where we are in terms of
you mean as Nigerians? Oh, okay.
Yes, Nigerians, Africans. I believe strongly that so on the one hand, that erosion is still there. That fading of our culture that started perhaps during colonization and whatnot is still ongoing. But at the same time, we have like a rebirth. We have like what people call renaissance that's going on. And I'm not one of those who is simply going to just focus on the negative. I'm quite aware of the negative. We've been seeing it since we were kids, when people used to call our language, our own special, historical, highly valued, layered, complex, highly poetic Yoruba language. Someone will now call it vernacular.
Hey.
And they'll tell you shouldn't speak. Come on now. That was a vestige of colonialism, which means one of those things that were left even after colonialism. Even though colonialism had gone, it was still there operating through agents that look just like you and me. Not to say that those people if they knew better, wouldn't have done better. They would have done better, but they didn't know better. They had been programmed by colonialism to enact policies that were really seriously debilitating to our culture.
Well, sorry to cut you there, Tosin. We're saying we're driving a little bit towards colonialism, and I hear you loud and clear. It might have had a part to play in all of this, but now we are past that era. Fast forward 10, 20, 50, 100 years from, I mean, it's not 100 basically, but, fast forward to many years from that. And we still blame colonialism, one. Two, the culture that we're talking about is still eroding, even worse than it started. I hear you also that you said, there's a rebirth and all that. That rebirth, is it, when we look at it categorically, is it really African anymore?
Okay, let me first do this. Let me first celebrate that rebirth that I'm talking about, and then I'll come back to this erosion. Just recently, about several months ago, I think it's about a year and some change now, I went to Jamaica. And in Jamaica, take note, Jamaica, for those of you who, maybe you weren't around at that time or whatever, Jamaican music used to be the top of the pops. Everyone was trying to fashion their music, to sound Jamaican, to be like reggae and all of that good stuff. At the beginning of this whole Afrobeats that you're now seeing, everybody was lapping up Jamaican music, right? And then, here we are today, Afrobeats is at the top of the pops, and we're really enjoying it. So I went to Jamaica and I literally saw them celebrating Nigerian music. They were lapping it up the same way that we were consuming their music. They were celebrating it. They could not resist it. There is zero doubt that that is African. Now, I'll give you an example of one of the songs that, so about a year before that, I visited Trinidad and Tobago, which is in the Caribbean as well. Okay. And there was a song that was trending at that time, and that's that you want to bamba, you want to chill
I want to chill with the big boys.
Take note. Number one, this song had Bini language. Number two, this song had pidgin. Barely any highfalutin English of any sort. It was very deeply Nigerian. Of course, it still had a bit of fusion with, when you look at the beats, that were probably, something that was kind of American or whatever. Oh, yeah, it was a remix of Ameno, which had like a classical feel to it. And whatnot. The long and short of the story is that song was very African. The Caribbeans couldn't resist it. Now, one of the things that I'm saying in essence, and my definition of African transcends just Africa, it goes to the diaspora. There is something within that, within the construct of Africa to the diaspora, even to, and when I say the diaspora, I'm talking about the Caribbean as well as the African American community in the United States. I believe very strongly that there are still cords that bind us. And here we are, these people are celebrating us. They can't resist the Africanness that's in this thing. And it hasn't always been that. Burna Boy, Ashake, Flavor, Adekunle Gold, Fowls the Bad Guy. We're talking about people who literally speak our languages. People who are literally putting our identity on billboards, on some of the biggest platforms across the world. I can tell you, I have never felt that proud before. I'm like, our Jamaican Marie.
Wow.
These are those Jamaicans that were, taking over the world with Sean Paul. Prior to that, Bob Marley and a bunch of others, Beanie Man, you name them. These were global stars. And then now I'm talking about literally them playing our music, perhaps more than they played their own music. What do you think about that?
Well, why does it end? I hear you loud and clear. I thank you for celebrating Africa. Tosin Odufa, the office of Tony Odufa. Let's go back to reality. Why does it feel like it all just ends with music? Music is definitely one of the biggest African exports, Why does it feel like at the end of it either ends with music or fashion? When it comes to our languages, something is still missing. We can't speak our languages very well, you know, proudly. Let's count how many Gen Zs now that can speak their languages. Or you don't think language is part of our culture? Is that important?
Oh, it's absolutely important to think culture. And so, see how I said, okay, at the same time that there is a fading, there is this rebirth. Which one is going to win is what we don't know yet.
Oh.
But of course, I'm bullish on our culture. I'm bullish that we are going to win. And the reason is, goes thus. Now, I believe that not only does music give us a superb competitive advantage, and I know you're going to say I'm coming back to music, but music is a vehicle that we have, that I have this theory that nobody else in the world, no other cultural group anywhere else in the world, and you don't necessarily have to quote me on this, but it's something that you can probably look back and evaluate and probably ask some experts on this. Our music will continue to make way for us, and it will elevate our language in such a way that it brings back the pride in that language. My sister, look, I was in New York, and I was in a Popeyes, and I decided to say it like that. Shout out to my Yankee people, Popeyes or Popeye. Check this out. It's not a posh spot at all. It's like a regular takeout. Just go there, go and buy some fried chicken and some what they call biscuits with some jelly on top. I'm talking about local stuff for them. It's like local, right? But it also has a little bit of African, and I'll explain, because they specialize in something called Cajun chicken. And hopefully we'll get to the point where we'll talk about food as well, because because food is part of culture.
Definitely.
Right? So they're kind of like our distant cousins, who also like pepper like us, and that's why some of us really like Popeye's chicken. See me, why am I talking? Why am I? This is a brand that I'm promoting here. That no more
like
promoting.
You've said it like 5 times now.
It's bad. But so here's the point. The point ultimately is, in that restaurant or carry out, they were playing Yoruba music back to back to back.
Wow.
Small time, I heard flavor, Igbo language. In Brooklyn, New York, a lot of the people that were in there were not Nigerians. Most of the people that came in to buy stuff were not Nigerians. The Nigerians that came in, of course, were loving it. And that was what was going on. I was proud. What I'm saying to you here is that when your language is put on a pedestal where everyone can look at it and literally celebrate it, you will appreciate it more. Check this out. When you hear people say, oh yeah now, when you hear people say, wahala, and when I'm talking about Africans who are not even Nigerians, for instance, right? That's a celebration of, for instance, the Yoruba language, right? What I'm saying to you is this. Thanks to social media and the capability of being able to promote video, to literally be able to send video from one phone to the other through social networks or through other platforms like WhatsApp and so on, we've been able to take into our hands the ability to promote what we want. Prior to the ability to create content and distribute it modularly that we're doing now, it was tightly controlled by organizations like yours.
True.
Tightly controlled by the Rhythms, the Ebony Live TVs, the Silver Birds, tightly controlled. But now the power is in our hands. And guess what now happens?
What?
People like Charlie Poppy can now blow. What I'm saying to you is this. Look, right now it is what the street wants that is going to blow. And the street is not interested in promoting people that are not authentically, in quotes, African.
That makes a lot of sense when you put it that way. You're doing a good job convincing me. This is Deep Waters with Debrah Waters joining conversation. Do you have any thoughts or comments? What do you think? Do you think that the African culture is gradually eroding? I still stand on that. I feel like it's fading away for some reason. But Tosi Odufa here, my special guest, says no, there's a rebirth of the African culture and doesn't really think that it's fading, or maybe he feels like there's a tie right there. What are your thoughts on this? Are you Team Debrah or Team Tosi Odufa? feel free to join the conversation calling on 0705 993 6937. Let me do that a little slower. 0705 993 6937 or 0705 993 7937. Thank you for taking us far and wide. Toasting your dufa after you carried us trabaye and you brought us back to Nigeria. Now let's come home now. Your thank God you're a politician. Your colleague or your colleague, so to say, 𝐓𝐇𝐈𝐒, when he was contesting to be the governor of Lagos State, I remember one time he was reading a speech or manifesto and all, and people were like, this man cannot speak his language, Yoruba, or he can speak it, but the thing was just not sweet or fluent in his mouth. It was sounded like a foreign language in his mouth and all that. And that just brought us back home that, maybe yes, 𝐓𝐇𝐈𝐒 studied abroad, was exposed to all that, but bringing it back home now, we say, his parents probably did not teach him language, or for some reason this language is not sweet in his mouth. Don't you think now, for somebody who's repping political sports like himself, what are your comments on that? Do you think there's an issue there, or do you feel like it has nothing to do with Africa at all? Before you answer that, let's quickly take a caller. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, thanks for calling.
I want to make a contribution to the topic at hand.
Okay.
I think what's happening to our culture is the previous generation, they were scared of taking their children home because of witchcraft, as they say, and people poisoning, or so because of that, they tend to raise their children in the city and as much as possible prevent them going back home. So now we growing up in the city, we only deal with the food and
the city food
music,
and the city life.
So the language itself, we hardly speak it. So now expecting us to teach our children, it becomes a
problem.
Difficult stuff. Yeah, it becomes a problem. Take me for instance. I don't even know how to speak my language. So how am I going to teach my kids? So I think we need to try to speak more of our language. Maybe our parents can try to teach us.
So it sounds like you have not given up yet. That's what it sounds like, right?
Yeah, I've not given up yet, but I still can't.
Let there be no but. Don't worry. Let there be no but. Let there be no but. And this is the reason why. You see, I think that we have reached a point where we're relatively lazy. And when I say relatively lazy, it's not because we're lazy people. Mm-hmm. It's the situation we found ourselves in that we must now correct. In certain parts of the world, and even in certain parts of this country, mm-hmm. people speak multiple languages. So it's probably more what would you call it? A city-dwelling Nigerian issue, where all we want to do is speak English. Come on, are you kidding?
But if you're asking me to speak Yoruba or my other dialect, who am I speaking it to?
Oh, okay.
If there's nobody to speak it around me, who am I speaking it to?
Well, first,
why should I learn it? What's the need for it?
Debrah, mm-hmm. First things first, you are in Lagos, mm-hmm. right? Uh-huh. So at least you're Yoruba. You have people to speak to, mm-hmm. right? Yes, your dialect in Lagos, you may not be able to have that many people to speak to. Mm-hmm. But the question is, why are you not learning Igbo or Hausa when there are people to speak to? Now, that question is not to make you feel bad, but it's for us to realize that we have not created the infrastructure that makes it possible for people to do this excellently.
What infrastructure?
I'll give you 1 point. The simple infrastructure is, where are the Igbo teachers that are doing Igbo lessons? Where are the Hausa teachers who are doing Hausa lessons? Where are the Yoruba teachers who are teaching Yoruba language in Lagos. I give kudos to the founders of the Yoruba. I believe there's a Yoruba museum now. And
Really?
and one of the things that I have said, and I have said this with quite a bit of pain, is that unfortunately governments, even in various regions, have failed Nigerians by not elevating our culture to the levels that they need to be elevated to. Museums are but just one small piece of what can help you celebrate your culture. Naming of buildings and of businesses is another way to celebrate. Whenever I look around and I see a vessel, being a ship, for instance, that is named a Nigerian name, I'm like, yes, powerful. I don't care if it is Onome, I don't care if it is Adedayo or Aisha or Osazuwa. Whatever the name is, I am happy, I am excited. But I look around and I see people in real estate, for instance, naming their names after British, what would you call it, areas. Places in England, places in the United States. Whereas, Bogon is there. You may not choose the actual name Bogon, but you can choose a name that means something to you. And indeed, Bogon itself could be a very powerful name.
But I hear you.
Brand speaking.
Trust me, I hear you loud and clear. But you're speaking from this, from your perspective as an upwardly African man. Now come back to your commercialization. Come back to you want to make money. You're talking about looking for demand and supply, and you're asking me to name my building Bogon, Bogon building in Banana Island. Is it Bogon people that come and buy it?
So here, that's an interesting point that gets people thinking. But here's my answer to that. Once you reach a certain level of success, it becomes your duty, in a sense, to champion certain things, number one. Number two, we are aware that there are benefits overall to the society and perhaps even to that business. And if the businesses that are, starting up earlier are not able to do that, and they see some advantage in naming their naming their business Northampton Courts or whatever in Lagos or in Ibadan, then so be it. However, government and non-profit institutions need to now create the incentives that ensure that we enshrine our culture in the areas where they should be enshrined. So you had mentioned politics and the importance of language and so on, and I feel very strongly that one of the reasons why we have arguments between us all is because we are not celebrating our own cultures, talk less of celebrating each other's cultures to the way that we should. I got the rare opportunity of seeing Flavor Nabania performing in Anambra. And I'm going to tell you that there was nothing quite like that. Except, of course, Ashake in Lagos. Adekunle Gold in Lagos. Faz the bad guy in Lagos. Just a few days ago, I heard a song on the radio, or I don't know if it was a radio, but it was in a supermarket, and everybody was dancing. I'm like, whoa, what's up with this song? Which song is this? I had to Shazam it. One thing, it was a northern song, or it was sung by a northern artist. I think it was in Hausa, and of course with a bit of pidgin and so on. I can't remember the name of the artist, and maybe I'll check it as we're going along. The point ultimately is that there's a cord that binds us, and it's a point to ask you now, because you are the one that said African culture. Is there an African culture? Is there a united African culture?
Of course, there's.
What is this?
Yes,
united
no, I've already
African
made that
culture?
clear from the beginning. I don't know if you were listening.
I was listening, but
Okay.
it was not. I know you think it was clear, but it's not something that can be clarified in one
Of course,
sentence.
because we have many cultures, under Africa, but there's a clear distinction between our Africanness and even the Western other, countries and all that. There is, I don't know, there is something.
I
there
like
is that thing.
I like the way you're bringing it, right? It's kind of like you're coming from, I don't know if I'll call it an exclusionary approach. You're like, okay, look, we know that this here is not African. Therefore, whatever else is left may well be African. It's one approach, and it brings us close to it. I was thinking about it earlier on, and one of the things that I said is that there are many threads that bind us, right? Many threads that bring us together, from language to and when I say language, it doesn't have to be the exact same language, but languages that sound alike, right?
Let me cut you right there. The last caller mentioned something about saying, "Oh, my parents did not teach me. I don't have anything to teach my kids at this point." And you said that you were saying something about, "Oh, there is still hope. You didn't give up." What can she do?
It is powerful, very important. Let me tell you. Look, I downloaded an app. Well, first things first. Yoruba mi omuto yitele, which is to say my Yoruba was not this strong before, right? But when I immersed myself in my locale, where my parents are from, where my ancestry is from, and in this case, it was through the political activity over the past
I wanted to ask
5 years, right?
What was driving you?
So
obviously, we could tell that there was some motivation or direction or motive.
Well, if you're saying that it was simply to improve my Yoruba language, that would have been pretty high. I could have just hired a Yoruba teacher like Gbadebo did. So that's not the scenario.
There's always
what
a
I'm
motive,
going to say
especially when you're an adult. That's what I mean.
That, so this is one of the collateral advantages of having gone through the political process, is that I was made to speak Yoruba exclusively. And when I say made, it's not as if anybody forced me to do that. I ensured that I did. Now, of course, I had the foundation of my parents having us learn Yoruba as kids. But unfortunately, if I were to judge myself as at that time, my proficiency in Yoruba was probably just about 55%. Shout out to Larry Omomo and Kule Kiladejo, who, while I was in the US, right, encouraged me to speak Yoruba with them. Not like they did it actively, but the fact that I noticed that they were comfortable speaking Yoruba, and these are some of the most brilliant people in the world. I'm going to say it that way, right? Who are more comfortable conversing in their native tongue, even though they have a solid grasp and a solid handle of English.
For people who don't have political positions and
right, so
the random people.
Yeah, so I've kind of spoken quite long around that and how I got it. Okay. But the point ultimately is it's time for us, and this is a quick shout out, or not even a shout out, a quick encouragement to entrepreneurs out there, particularly tech entrepreneurs. It's time you built an app that is powerful that I can use to learn African languages. Right now, take note, I downloaded an app to learn Igbo, right? My Yoruba is solid now. Downloaded an app to learn Igbo. The next one is now Hausa. But the app, let me be real with you, was not that great.
Okay.
All I can say is humble Tosi.
Let's take a call. Last caller for today. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for calling.
Okay,
thanks for calling back.
Yeah, I just want to tell you, the way, even though we spell our name, like this, we see many people on Facebook or something like that. If you want to spell on our name, we see the
you put all the Y's and all the things there.
We see the way they will spell it, you will like...
It's like, say Yoruba, not Lele. Is this Yoruba?
Maybe it's a fishy or something like that. But after you telling me something that one man, you think that you don't hear Yoruba, you be Olori Buruku. You say, by the time you not tell that you say you be Olori Buruku, you hear Olori Buruku. You can't tell them. Yeah, I don't say if you don't hear Yoruba, that thing is instructive language, bad language, it's a course. My children call it back. It's back. They you said you be Olori Buruku. That's it. You get some certain things. Our language started from parents. Because if they go to school, they go to school to go and learn English or something else, and education. But your language in the house it's a moral education. Just try to be speaking. That's my own
Are
contribution.
you teaching your children how to speak your language, Olawale?
I'm teaching them now. How they will not know? How my daughters know that one man, Olori Buruku, that Olori Buruku.
Okay, this Olori Buruku don't see plenty for my ear today. Thank you so much. I appreciate Olawale. Okay, we have a few minutes to wrap up the show. In fact, less than a minute or two. I wanted you to comment on your colleagues' inability to speak fluent language.
What I will say about language is the reality that it confers advantage upon us. There's no doubt that we're at a point where politics or where governance or the best of governance is desired with such fervor, right? The demand for quality governance is desired with such fervor that people are willing to vote for somebody
Just
that actually
because.
cannot even speak your language. That's the frank reality. But what I will say to you is this: we all know that our language is critical to be able to connect well on various levels with Nigerians and whatnot. But at the end of the day, think about it. We're talking about African identity, right?
Yes.
And there are many things that bind us, and I hope I can complete this
That's
before
in
we
a
go
minute.
on. Right. The many threads that bind us can be your name, the way it sounds, it can be your religion, it can be the food that you eat, it can be the way you dress and whatnot. But imagine that all these threads wind around some end where others start, which is to say, not all of these are necessary at the same time for you to be African. You just need to have the right mix to be
very
African,
brilliant. Ooh.
which makes it interesting to even be able to say that. I'm not going to say this will be a little too controversial, no. But what I'm going to ask you is this: Is Amala African?
Well, yes, it is. Very.
How about noodles?
I don't think so.
I would say sometimes.
What?
Especially in Nigeria. You already know how we rock that noodle. Is 𝐸𝐔𝐄 African?
What's
It's a traditional religion that deifies certain important
obviously, that's African.
figures. How about Christianity?
Well, I wouldn't know.
You don't go 𝐘𝐻𝐿.
Which in KIS?
Go 𝐘𝐻𝐿 first.
Try.
Come back and answer that
Then you
question.
now okay. Let me go then.
Dark skin, is it African?
Well, it is, isn't it?
How about white skin? Is it possible?
It's not now.
Have you heard of Susan? Was it Susan Wenger? What's her name?
Wow, this is
lady
beautiful. I love the way you put it,
in
Tosin.
Oshu, who became the custodian of a certain Yoruba way of life.
Oh my God, we have to
and
go now.
dedicated to
Sadly, we have to go. But this has been very beautiful, and this ending is so profound. Thank you so much, Tosin Odefa.
Thank you very much.
How can people find you on social media, Bill?
It's Tosin Odunfa, and that's it. T-O-S like Sam, I like India, N like Nancy, O like Oscar, D like dog, U like umbrella, N like Nancy, F like Frank, A.
All right, thank you so
on all
much.
platforms.
Tosin Odunfa.
Odunfa.
For coming on the show.
Hopefully,
Hopefully,
you see how now she can't even pronounce my name.
your creators. Maybe hopefully you create the app now that we can all learn Yoruba and our languages from.
I'm
You're
really
working on
this
it,
is a shout out to anyone out there who wants to create an app that helps us to learn African languages. Shoot me a DM. Let's get that done.
Yeah, Tosin is a very, very passionate individual. Trust me, he's going to get it done if he says he will. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. To all my callers and listeners, thank you for being a part of the show. This has been Deep Waters with Debrah Waters. I'll be back again on Wednesday at exactly 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. for another amazing show for you. Don't also follow at Deep Waters _podcast on Instagram. My name is Debrah Waters, and this has been a fantastic episode with Tosin Odunfa. Bye-bye.